Hello everybody, boys and girls. Welcome to the next video. I'm sitting here in my garden in this beautiful summer day and I've got nothing better to do but to make videos for you. We're gonna do Opentoonz today. Opentoonz is animation and it's completely free and open source. And the advantage of using free and open source in the 9626 is that students at home can very easily install it on their own computers or their own laptops, and they can practice at home and they're not reliant on the school computers. And also, it doesn't cost any money whatsoever to install. Opentoonz can do everything that is required by the syllabus, and it can do basically everything that Adobe Animate can do. In fact, if you compare Opentoonz and Adobe Animate, I would even say that Opentoonz is slightly better. I like it slightly more, but I'm biased because I love open source. But the one thing that Opentoonz has a disadvantage of Adobe Animate is that, if I'm honest, Opentoonz is just a little harder to learn. But if you follow along with me in this video, it shouldn't be too hard. There's only two things which are a bit more tricky uh, in Opentoonz. The first thing is basic raster drawing and vector drawing. It's a little bit more tricky when it comes to colors and such. And also masking. Creating masks is a bit harder. So I created this checklist as usual, and this checklist covers everything you need to know for both the syllabus 2024 and the syllabus up to 2027. In addition to this checklist, I've also created a list of exercises, and we're going to work through each exercise, and it's going to cover most of these points on the checklist. But before we get started, let's make sure we have everything installed what we need to install. So make sure we have Opentoonz installed. Also make sure we have Inkscape installed, and we also want to download ffmpeg. Inkscape is free and open source, and we need Inkscape just because of one thing, which is tracing bitmaps. So that's one thing that Opentoonz cannot do, is trace bitmaps. So if we need to do it, we need to use Inkscape to trace the bitmaps, and then we can easily import. ffmpeg is going to help us export to GIF, which is not specifically mentioned in the syllabus, but I noticed in a bunch of past papers they ask us to export to GIF. Let's get started by just quickly downloading ffmpeg. So I just want to do this first because, for obvious reasons, we really want to make sure it's working before the exam, and we don't want to find out while we're doing the exam that it's not working, because we really need an internet access to do it. So Opentoonz and Inkscape are relatively easy to install, so I'm going to check them off. Let's start with ffmpeg. We need to go to ffmpeg.org/download.html. When we're there, we go to Linux if you're on Linux, Windows if you're on Windows, and Mac if you're on Mac, obviously. And we're going to download giant.dev. I'm going to go to giant.dev, and we're here on ffmpeg builds, and we can just pick the essentials one. We don't need the full version. If you get 7Z, then install 7. Then you may as well download this one. But I actually don't have 7Z, and I couldn't be bothered to install it, so I went down here and downloaded the zip, which you can see down here. The zip opens automatically in Windows. Open it, and we go to the bin folder. And in the bin folder, we've got 3.exe files. These 3 files need to be copied somewhere. I'm just going to be super lazy, super duper lazy, and I'm going to put it on my desktop in the folder ffmpeg. In fact, I already did this before. So after you've copied these 3 exe files, we are going to go to Opentoonz. And we have this startup thing. And then we're going to click on X. And first thing is we want to link this ffmpeg. So we have to go to File, Preferences, Import, Export. And here we have the ffmpeg path. We click on these dots and I'm going to go to the desktop. And here is the folder. I put the pre.x's in and we click on Choose and Close. And now we're going to close this and we're going to open it again. And if you want to make sure it's working, we're going to go to Render and we're going to go to Output Settings and go down here and we have File Settings, TIFF. Click on TIFF and scroll up and hopefully you will find GIF. If you find GIF there, you did everything right. If you don't find GIF there, it's not working. You have to try to do it again. Okay, so that covers ffmpeg. Next, let's have a quick overview of what happens when we start Opentoonz. So let's start up Opentoonz. And as you can see, when we start up, we get this startup dialog. We have a current project which is called Sandbox, in which I'm doing a bunch of tests. Let's start a new project, and our new project is going to contain a large number of scenes as well. And we can't really pick the root folder, so let's leave it like that. And we have to set the project name, and we're just going to say getting ready for the exam. It's going to start in this folder, and each of these are various folders which are related to, which are going to be relative to this project name. But we don't need to worry about that for now. Let's click on OK. And now we have the Sandbox project, which has a number of scenes in it, and we've got the Getting Ready for the Exam project, which has so far 0 scenes in it. We're going to start a brand new scene. So let's click over here and let's name it Scene 1. It's very creative, I know. Scene 1, we have a width of 16 inches and a height of 9 inches. And we're going to stick with this resolution. Okay. And now we have a quick look. On the left-hand side, we have a toolbar. And on the top, we have the menu items. Then we have a whole bunch of windows. If you have something completely different from this, you can always go to Windows, Workspace, Reset to Default Rooms, and then you'll have to restart Opentoonz. And when you do, it will be exactly the way I'm showing it. Let's have a quick look what happens when we click on one of the tools. Look up here below the menu items. Depending on which tool we have selected, the options up here change. We have the canvas here, we have a timeline down here, and we have some kind of color picker up here, and what's called a level palette here. Then we have a level strip. We don't need to know what a level palette is and a level strip is. Okay, let's have a closer look at these windows. So we have this tab selected, which is called Drawing. We can click on Clean Up Too, which completely changes our layout But don't worry, it looks confusing now, but actually quite simple. We don't really need to know about any of these because anytime we need one of the windows, which we don't have up here, we can go to Windows. And for example, let's open up the X sheet and we can open it up. All of these windows we can click and drag to move it around, and we can also dock it. So if you drag it to somewhere, if a red line shows up, you can drop it in there. There we go. Let's drop it in over here, and then we can open it up like that. Anyway, I'm going to close this X sheet for now. Now let's have a quick look. Here we have a bunch of tools, and one tool we have is called the brush tool, the most straightforward tool we can imagine. We click on it, and up here we're going to take, there's a min size and a max size. It depends on if you have a stylus. If you have a stylus, it depends on how much pressure you push. However, we are using only a mouse, so it doesn't really matter. So we're always going to be using the maximum pressure. Here, this is a confusing part actually, is we have a level color palette. And so far we've been drawing using color number 1. I can change this color, and everything I've drawn with color number 1 changed. If I want to use multiple colors, I need to add another color and change that color, and then draw using color number 2. If I change color number 2, it changes everything I've already drawn. Another thing that's slightly confusing is we have different levels. So we go and create a new level, and we are going to name our level. And let's, for example, let's name it background. And we can choose between different types of levels. You can pick a vector level or a raster level. Let's stick to Toonz vector and Toonz raster because it's easiest, and we don't need more than that. Raster means it's pixelated, and we brush on it like normal. Vector means we're going to use vector, similar to Inkscape or similar to Illustrator. Once we've drawn with vector using the Bezier Curves tool or the pen tool or whatever you want to call it, we can modify the shapes which we've already drawn. So let me create one vector level called background, or let's just call it vector, and click on OK. And we're also going to create another level, and we're going to make it a raster level, and click on OK. So now once I've selected my raster level, I'm going to draw a polygon with 4 sides. And that's just a square, obviously. Let's make a 6-sided polygon, a hexagon. But if we draw it in the vector level, excuse me, it looks slightly different. That's because this one is vector and this one is raster. Let's go to the control point editor tool. And now that we've used the control point editor tool, we can see that we can change these nodes around. If you haven't done vector graphics yet, I recommend you do graphics to get a better understanding of what vectors and rasters are. I can't do that. I cannot use the control point editor on a Toonz raster level. So I recommend most of the time you use vector levels. Okay, so that's enough to get an overview. Let's start doing these practice exercises. First exercise, frame by frame. Draw the background, rename the layer to background. Okay. First thing I'm gonna do is we're gonna go to project management and we're gonna start a new project. And we're going to name our project lesson 1. Now we have to be very careful because it's automatically going to put it in this path on the C drive. But when we're working, we want to copy it to our own working folder. So if you're doing an exam, you need to copy it to your own working folder. So let's just simulate the exam process. And let's say, just for convenience sake, let's put our working folder on the desktop. This I did a bit earlier. We can delete this. So we have an empty working folder. And when we're done with this lesson, we're going to copy everything we did to that working folder. Because we need to provide as much evidence as possible for the examiner to prove that we're pretty good at animating and we're going to get a good grade. We deserve a good grade. Okay, so let's draw this background. We want to make a new level. And it's going to be a stationary level. And in this case, it's pretty easy just to make a Toonz raster level. Let's name the level background. And now, when we click here, we're going to draw in this level. We pick the brush. Let's make a reasonable sized brush, like this. And let's draw in the background. Oh, you know what? It's still smoothing it too much. Let's Control Z. And let's change the color to green. And we're going to use the fill to fill the bottom in. And we're going to add a new color. Don't forget, you might be tempted to change it to blue, but now it's suddenly the ocean. So let's press Ctrl Z. We're going to add a new color, and the new color is going to be green or blue. It's nice sky blue. And there we go. What else do we need? We want to draw these clouds. So we add a new color, a nice gray, and draw on these clouds. It doesn't have to be a Picasso. Just do something. I'm actually working on my touchpad and then fill this in. So it's even uglier than if I was using a stylus or a mouse. But it doesn't really matter. We're not showing the examiner how good we are at drawing. It's not an art class, it's an animation class. So basically we're interested in proving that we know the basics about animation. Well, I think it's really beautiful. And probably it's gonna sell it as an NFT later on. Let's add another yellow and I'm gonna color it. Make a circle. Control Z. Color it in. Now the advantage is I don't really like this yellow, so we can so easily change it until we get a nice yellow we like. All of these colors, if you don't like it, you can easily change it. And then you can very easily change the overall scheme of it. It's not that intuitive, but it's very useful. If the boss suddenly says, okay, well, I like it, but I want you to change all the colors, you don't have to redraw everything. You just do it. Okay, we've done the background. Let's save our project. Control S. And we're gonna name it. We're in lesson 1. We're in project root lesson 1. Scenes. We're gonna name it lesson 1. No, the scene, the only scene. We only have one scene. Okay. Next. Add an additional layer named ball and use the circle tool to draw the ball floating in midair. We're gonna go over here. We'll right click, insert a new level. And this level is gonna be called ball. And in this case, we don't want Toonz raster, but we want Toonz vector. And click on OK. And now we are going to draw a circle. Pick a nice dark blue. Fill it in. Now we're done. Control S. Make the ball fall and bounce by adding multiple keyframes. And use onion skinning to guide you. Use free selection tool to squash the ball as it hits the ground and add frames to the ground to the background layer so that it persists across all frames. Export the animation frame as a GIF. Okay, so we have this. Let's say it's gonna last 24 seconds. Let's extend the background at 24 frames. Let's extend the background. We have 24 frames per second, so 24 frames is exactly 1 second. And now when I drag this, we have the background the whole time. Let's do the same with the ball. Okay, so now we have 2 layers, one with the ball and one with the background. And we want the background to stay stationary, so we're not going to do anything, but we also want the ball to move, and we're going to do it in the simplest way possible. The simplest, yet most time-consuming way possible. So let's do it. Here we have a series of frames, and we're going to go to the second frame, and we're going to press D, which is for duplicate. And now that we've pressed D, we can go to the selection tool. Make sure we've got type on rectangular, and we're going to click and drag to select the ball. We can use the selection tool to stretch out our ball, but we're not going to do that. And we can also use it to rotate the ball, but it's a circle, so we can't notice. There's really no point. And we can also enlarge or stretch in multiple ways. What we really want to do right now is just move it. As you can see, we have a little, if we hover over the edge of the ball, it turns into 4 arrows, and that's the symbol for moving. We're going to move it a little forward. And then we're going to go to the next frame again and press D again. And we're going to move it forward again. And now it looks as though it's moving, right? So it's a bit tricky to do it like this. So I know a little trick. We're going to click over here and over here. And now we're going to see not only the current frame, but we're also going to see the past frame in slightly reddish tint and the future frame in a bluish tint. We don't need only one frame, but we can do multiple onion skinning frames.
Here we see 3 of them. Let's press D again. Oh, let's click over here to the current frame and press D. And we're going to use the selection tool to move that forward too. And now it's a bit easier to adjust it appropriate. We want it like in a kind of parabolic motion, if you remember your physics lesson. So it doesn't just fall straight down at a constant speed. A little bit of physics will help you to make good animations. Okay, let's say over here, we're gonna say that the ball has hit the ground. And you know, when the ball hits the ground, it kind of compresses. So we're gonna shrink it a little bit. Going, oh, D. And then, next thing, it's gonna bounce right back up, right? It looks pretty good. It's a bit fast, so let's lower the FPS to 12. Looks pretty good. And now we can render. And remember that we already linked ffmpeg. So in this case, we can go to output settings. And over here, where it says save in, it's probably a pretty good idea to go and press the dots and go to the working folder and export it over here. And we're also gonna name it whatever they tell you to name it. I'm gonna name it question 1, and then your name 999, your candidate number and your center number, like they usually tell you to do. We're going to export it as a GIF. And as you can see, it works. So now when you're done with the project, you're really, just to be on the safe side, let's make a folder. Let's call it question 1. XX 999 99 1 2 3 4, and we're gonna go. So we're gonna go to the C drive, and we're gonna go to Opentoonz stuff, and remember how we made a project named Lesson 1. We're going to Control C the entire folder. If we have a look inside, we see drawings, outputs, everything. We're going to take this entire folder and we're going to copy it to the working folder to provide evidence to the examiner, so the examiner will know that we did something in Opentoonz. And we're going to rename this Opentoonz working files. Question 1, Opentoonz working files. XX 999 1 2 3 4. And then we can be like, yes, we can relax. We did the question. Okay, so that's the first question. Let's have a look at the thing. We learned about setting the size and the aspect ratio, but not yet about setting the color. We learned about creating raster and vector levels, and we learned about size, position, and orientation. So let's move on with the next lesson, transformation tweens. Transformation refers to all these kinds of movements which any object can do, which includes shrinking and enlarging and moving from left to right and rotating. So we're going to go and we're going to create a new project via project management, new project. And we're going to remember it's in the project root. We're going to create a new name. In this case, let's name it lesson 2. And then we're going to press Ctrl S to save our scene. And our scene is going to be, again, this lesson only has one scene. In all of these lessons, we'll all stick to one scene only. But if you're working on a big project, you'll have multiple scenes in one project. But that's beyond the scope of the syllabus. We don't need to worry about using multiple scenes. Okay. We want to draw the background, draw a ball layer, and draw a golf club layer. And then we're going to rotate the golf club using an animation tween. In Opentoonz, it's called an animation tween. And we are going to use a motion tween, a translation tween, in other words, to move this white ball. And we're also going to move and shrink this putting hole. Easy, right? Okay, let's start by creating all the layers we need. We may as well. We're going to just create a new level. And the new level is, we're going to make them all Toonz vector, because I prefer working in Toonz vector. And the first one is called background. Well, in fact, let's make the background Toonz raster. Background. Okay. We can rename these layers too. Let's put in a level. Excuse me. Let's make a new level, and it's gonna be a vector level, and we're gonna call it golf club. Golf ball. and a new level called putting hole. In fact, it does not really matter that much what each of these levels are called. I mean, whether we're using raster or vector. But you can see that green is for raster, toonz raster, and yellow is for toonz vector. So now we have our layers. Let's rename them all. What was this? I forgot. Golf club. Oh, golf club. This will be golf ball, putting hole. Let's quickly draw everything. The golf club will consist of rectangles. The golf ball is going to be just a white circle. And the golf hole is going to be a black circle. So how long does this animation last? It lasts about 2 seconds, let's say. So let's say we get 24 frames per second. We're gonna stretch all of these all the way up to 48. And now we're gonna start with the golf club. Let's select the very first frame of the golf club, and we're gonna set the initial position of the golf club. We're gonna just take our selection tool, and we're gonna select both these objects. We're gonna move it down here. And now we're gonna animate. Very first thing needs to have its initial position, and we're going to go to the animate tool, and then we're going to click over here. This means set key. Set key means keep everything as it is in this frame. And then we're going to go, I don't know, half a second later, or let's say 1/4 of a second later, and we're going to set a new frame. And the new frame, we're going to set the position, we're going to set the rotation. First of all, we want to change the center of rotation to, it's right now it's over here, and we want to change the center of rotation to over here. And then after that, we're going to rotate to back here. And as you can see, here we have a keyframe, and here we have a keyframe, and we have a little white line between them. And the white line automatically calculates all these in-between frames. So as you can see, up, up, or using onion skinning, we can easily see what's going to happen and what just happened. Incidentally, if we have the center of rotation in a different place, if I had not moved the center of rotation and you rotate it, then it rotates around that. So always make sure to move the center of rotation first. Okay, so in the first quarter of a second, it moves back. And then the next quarter of a second, we want it to move forward again. So we go back to rotate. And it's going to go all the way like that. Let's see what we have so far. So as you can see, this is a much more efficient way of doing things than the frame-by-frame animation which we did last time, which would have taken us ages. Okay, let's go to the white ball. And the white ball has to stay, the golf ball has to stay over here. So I'm going to set a keyframe over here. And it has to stay stationary the whole time just until it gets hit. So this is the last time when it's stationary. Then over here, we're going to set one. After that, we say it travels at a constant speed until it gets all the way over here at the end of the 2 seconds. So let's go up here to position, and we're going to move it all the way over here. So we have 3 keyframes for the golf ball. Be stationary again. So these 2 keyframes are exactly the same, so Opentoonz knows not to change it in between them. And then the final keyframe go all the way over there. And all the in-between frames are calculated. Let's see how that looks. Okay, the final one, we're going to go like this. And we're going to move the initial position of the ball up here so that the ball seems to be going at the right, seems to be exactly on target until the very last moment, like over here or something. So remember, this is supposed to be stationary, so let's set a keyframe over here. And then, by the time it's over here, the ball is small and has moved out of the way. So let's change the scale. Again, the center of rotation is over here, which is also the center of scaling. So as I scale, it scales inwards towards the center. So let's Control Z that just to avoid confusion, and we're going to move the center of scaling before we do the scaling. And the center of scaling should be the middle of this ball. And it becomes that small. And it's also going to move out of the way in that time as well. So let's see how that looks. Or in a preview. No, it's very slow, this preview. Very nice. Okay, we want to export this. Let's export this. Render, fast render to MP4. And it's putting it on the desktop. Don't forget to copy everything to the working folder. So here I have my Opentoonz stuff. First, I'm going to make sure everything is saved. Control S. Control S. We're going to go to C drive Opentoonz stuff projects, lesson 2. And we're going to control paste the whole control C, working folder, control V. And we're also going to go to our desktop. And we're going to control C. And we're going to go control V. Okay. We're also going to make sure that everything has a nice name. So let's call it lesson 2. It's X999. Okay, so just a couple more things. First of all, we haven't quite learned about the shear value. Let's pick the background and we're going to set a new keyframe over here. And we're going to, in the animation tool, add some shear. Shear is just another word for skew. We set another keyframe over here and put the shear in the other direction. And then we're going to, and as you can see, Opentoonz interpolates between them. If you want, by the way, for any of these transformations to use precise values, for example, I want a precisely 20-degree horizontal shear and a 0-degree vertical shear, you can put the precise values up here. And you can do that also for position and for rotation and for scale. And also when it comes to moving the center of shear, the center of rotation, and the center of scale. All combines all of these at the same time. So it's useful if you want to uh, do multiple transformations without switching between tools. And that's all. Let's have a look at the checklist. So we just learned about in-betweening tools. Basically, that's all the new stuff we learned about. We learned about translation, which is just moving left and right and up and down, scale, rotate, and skew. Next, we're going to learn about in-betweening shapes and in-betweening color. And for that, we're going to do these two exercises. So we're going to make a new project. And we're going to name it Lesson 3. And in this project, we actually have two separate scenes. So we're going to save our first scene, and we're going to call it Rec Triangle. And we're going to start with a rectangle. And let's select it. Oh, I'm stupid. This is very important. When you actually draw without specifying what type of level it is, it's going to make a raster level out of it. We don't want a raster level. We only want vector level. So we're going to create a new level first. It's very important. When it comes to making shape tweens, you need to be working in vectors. Apply. Close. So we now have a vector level, and we're going to draw a rectangle. And once we've drawn the rectangle, we are going to fill it. And I believe we need to fill it with the color blue. Let's keep this color black for now, and let's create a new color. And the new color is going to be blue. And fill it. Remember, we can change this color at any time. So we can change the fill and the gradient color just by remembering which color we corresponds to which part of the drawing. Okay. Also, let's make this stroke a bit wider.
we can use the selection tool to select our vector object. And over here, we can click and drag to make it wider. Or if you want to go here, you can set a precise value. Let's put it, I don't know, to a nice value of 5. That seems reasonable. It's a bit wide. It doesn't really matter. But let's put it to 2. Okay. And let's set the color to blue. What does the assignment say? A blue stroke and a red fill. Okay. Let's set the fill to red and the stroke to blue. Very nice. And then we're going to make another shape. And we're going to press Control. And we're going to press D. And I want you to keep it, when I press D for duplicate, I want you to keep an eye on this level. So when we press D, we made duplicate. What we actually did is we duplicated the drawing in the first image. And in fact, we don't want to duplicate it necessarily. We want to select it and remove it, to delete it. Let's also do onion skinning when it comes to the level strip. So the level strip is just a series of frames, and we will be able to adjust these frames and put them in the timeline. They're basically just frames that are associated with the level but have not yet been put in the timeline. We'll go to circle. And thanks to our onion skinning, we know exactly the right place to put our circle. But in fact, let's press Ctrl Z and create a brand new color. And the brand new color is going to be green. And then let's draw the circle. And let's use the selection tool to move it over here. And let's make the stroke a bit wider. And let's also make one more color for the fill. It's going to be pink. And we're going to fill the circle with pink. So now we have 2 images in our level strip. And we want to create a whole bunch of images in our level strip, and each image is going to be a gradual transformation from the original shape to the new shape. So let's right click, and we're going to go to insert, add a new frame. Insert. Let's press the insert button as a shortcut. There it is. As a shortcut, you can see that the numbers of these levels change. The level images change. And here the number also changes as I press I. We can change this to 1. That basically means that the first level is shown in the first frame. Or 2, the second level is shown in the first frame. Or 8, we could put 8 here. The 8th picture is shown in the first frame. Let's put it back to how it was. Okay, we want to make this color, this shape, gradually transform into this shape. So we're going to select all of them, including just by holding Shift, you click, press down Shift, click. And you see this little in-between button appears. And we can pick the kind of interpolation. Let's just stick to linear. And as you can see, we gradually morph into a circle. Putting on onion skinning, we see how it happens gradually. Only one problem is this only exists in There's 8 separate drawings. We really want to see it on the timeline. So what we're going to do is we're going to select them all, and we're going to right click, and we're going to say expose in XSheet. And this is going to change, make a very gradual transformation. Only thing is it's working, but the color is not transforming gradually. So in order to make the color transform gradually, we're going to change this color. We're going to animate the color too. So how do we animate the color? We're going to go all the way back here, Control Z, and now we have the second frame in our strip, and we're going to select it. Now, and we have these predefined colors. We've got blue and red. We're going to take this blue, and we're going to add a dot. We're going to add, no, we're going to draw the circle using the same colors as we drew the rectangle. So let's select the second rectangle in our second level, and we're going to draw the circle. Let's put on onion skinning so we know where we're drawing. And we're going to keep it as blue, and we're going to go to fill, and then we're going to keep it as red. So the same 2 colors are used. The only difference is we're going to animate the colors. So let's do that again. Press insert. And we're going to select all of this in between, and then we're going to expose to XSheet. And let's just delete this column. We don't need it anymore. And as you can see, it transforms just like we expected. Oh, but we want to change the color as well. So we've got blue, and we're going to put a keyframe over here, and we're going to put a keyframe over here, and then we're going to go over here, and we want our new colors. Our new colors are green and black. So the stroke becomes black, and the fill becomes green. And as you can see, also the color is changing gradually. So let's save that. We also want to set the canvas color to light blue. Okay, so next let's set the background color of the canvas. So I'm going to set the canvas color. It's in XSheets, Scene Settings. And we're going to set it to light blue, so we're going to remove some red. And don't forget, we need to make sure it's fully opaque. This means it's fully transparent. This means it's fully opaque. So now we have a light blue background. And then let's save it. And we're going to go to render fast render to MP4. And we're going to make sure that the file we just rendered, rect triangle, we're going to put it to our working folder. And we're going to call it lesson 3. Now for the second part of our exercise, we're going to make a new scene, save scene as, and we're going to call it the Hulk. Oh, I was stupid. We're going to make a new scene first. And then we're going to save it as the Hulk. And the Hulk is very simple. We're going to basically do what we did before, but we're just going to use ovals. And we're going to remember it has to be vector.
new level, Toonz vector. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And we're going to name this vector transform. And we're going to draw a very simple beige man. Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V. And let's select the whole thing and move it a little bit over here. And make sure the level strip is open. Let's save what we have so far. We go to View, we go to Window. The level strip, if you don't have it open, is over here. Now I have two of them open. We're going to go here, just press Insert to create a new frame. Or if that doesn't work, just right click and Insert. Oh, I don't know why it doesn't work. Here we go. Here we go. Unbelievable. Let's select all of this. Just Control X, put it in the first frame, Control V. And now let's switch on onion skinning and let's create our new guy. Our new guy is going to be super buff. So I think the easiest thing to do actually would be, instead of inserting a blank frame, let's just delete this one and duplicate this one. Delete. I don't know why it's not going away. Anyway, because now we have the exact same shapes and the exact same color, we just need to adjust it. And we're going to use the transformation tool to adjust it, to make it much bigger. Okay, we'll rotate it like this. And then move it like this. And now we're going to insert a whole bunch of frames. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 45. That should be enough. Select them all in between and expose. And now we also want to change the color. So we're going to select this color and add a new keyframe to the color over here. And over here, it's going to be dark green. There we go. And let's see how that looks in the preview. Very nice. In fact, for dramatic effect, let's extend this out a little longer. Okay, let's set the background color too. Backsheet scene settings. We're gonna set the background color to blue, to green. Let's set to green. And we should export it. Today we're gonna export it as a series of TIFF images. Render,
render, oh, cancel, render output settings. Make sure we have TIFF selected over here. And now let's see what its output says. Outputs. As you can see, we have a whole series of TIF images. And when I open it up and flip between the images, we see the animation. 48 images. Okay, once we're done, let's copy this whole thing as usual. Copy and move it to the working folder. Paste and rename. And let's go quickly back to our checklist and see what we've learned. We've learned about setting the color of the canvas. And we've also learned about creating vector. Well, let's wait a bit. But we have learned about controlling the object properties. And we've also learned about creating fill settings. We're going to come back to this a little bit later. We also know how to change shape and color. Also, we know how to use layers. Now, let's move to the next exercise. In this exercise, we will create this animation, which is going to teach us all about refining tweens. We can start by drawing the background. In Opentoonz, there is no easy way that I'm aware of to draw a gradient. So we're going to draw the gradient in Inkscape and then import it. So let's start by going to Opentoonz, and we're going to go to File, Project Management, New Project, and it's going to be lesson 4, as I'm sure you can predict by now. And we're going to save it. And again, we have only one scene, so we're just going to call it Rocket. And let's open up Inkscape, which is also free and open source, as you know. And let's draw the background. I'm going to create new document. And we're going to start by changing the page. And we're going to put it in landscape orientation. Pixels. Let's look up the exact same pixels just to be nice and neat. Yeah, in output settings, 19201080. Okay. And let's zoom out a bit. And we're going to put in 2 rectangles. Let's remove the stroke. Change the fill color to some dark green. And we can get rid of these rounded corners. And then let's make another one. And we're going to add a gradient over here. Starting at the top, ending at the bottom. Setting the bottom color to
If you don't know how to do this yet, we're going to learn this when we're learning about vector graphics. So this is pretty good. And now we're going to export it, and we're going to export the page, and we are going to set it to the desktop. We just call it bitmap. Well, you know what? We're not going to call it bitmap. We're going to put it in our working folder, because usually when it comes to getting good points in our usually when it comes to getting points on the exam, you want to upload as much evidence as possible. So I'm going to upload this folder as well to our working folder. So here I'm going to take the bitmap, copy it to the working folder, and rename it to lesson 4 background XX 999 1234. And here we're going to, straight after that, import it into Opentoonz just by clicking and dragging. And we're going to click on import. So as you can see, it's a bit bigger than the camera, but that's okay. That doesn't really matter. Let's rename this layer to background. Oh, let's see. Draw the rocket, the moon, and the explosion, each on their own layer. So we're going to create 3 new layers. We can only name it after we've already got a level on it for some reason. And I'm going to make them all vectors. Because, like I said, make sure you're drawing on vector layers. Rocket. Raster layer is useful when you have a stylus. Vector layer is useful when you have a mouse. Let's draw the rocket. We're going to use a simple rectangle. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. No, I was on the right layer. Control Y. Let's fill it up. Make sure you're working on the right layer. Fill it up. And then let's make a simple ellipse. I'm just going to draw it over here, and I'm going to use the selection tool. And we can use the arrows to move it with some more precision. We can also zoom in. To be as precise as we want. Okay, and then we're going to fill that in too. And next, we're just going to use the pen tool. We're going to add another color. Oh, why is that? Oh, annoying. This is a pen tool. We use a pen tool to move down. I'm going to draw the fire down here using the brush. I think width of 5 is all right. And let's fill it up. And let's add one more color. And we're going to draw the red inside. You can also draw blue blue is even hotter than red for some reason. Or it seems to be even hotter. So now it's a bit tricky because we've got this vector stuff going on. It's not really coloring it in properly. So sometimes you gotta get a little creative. I'm gonna do that by drawing a red rectangle over here. I'm filling in the rectangle. No, that doesn't work either. Let's try again with the brush. Yeah, it's not exactly a Picasso, but it's gonna have to do. Okay, so the problem now is the fire is on. It's kind of messy over here, so I don't like this mess. So I'm gonna click on this rocket, right click, and we are going to move it forward. Mm, here, I'm blind. Right, and we want to move forward the fill as well. I don't know why I didn't fill, but hopefully using this color. No. Okay, so we're gonna have to be creative again and brush over it again. We also have the eraser tool, which in this vector level is also kind of hard. So if you're really fiddling about like that, you might want to go to raster level after all. But we're gonna leave it as this. We don't need to be perfect. So we're gonna unzoom and again. And we're gonna go to the moon layer and we're just gonna draw a very simple circle over here. I can barely see it. So we change the color to a nice yellow and fill it in with the same color. Good enough like that. Let's change the rocket color too. Let's make it gray. Just to be precise, I can just copy those numbers. So you will recall something went wrong and I accidentally created two colors for the same thing. It kind of created a mess, but it's okay. We're gonna leave it like this. Okay, the moon, we done it, and now the explosion. The explosion is simply a number of ellipses. And we're gonna start with red. You know what? I don't think this vector is really working for. I'm gonna delete this level. I'm gonna just, and we're gonna add another level. And we're gonna call it explosion. And we're gonna make sure it's Toonz raster level. We already have it raster. Okay. And now we're going to draw with the ellipse. Let's pick a nice red color. And for future reference, we're going to pick yellow as well. And now let's pick red. Fill it up. And then yellow. Fill it up. And then we're going to select it. And we're going to Control C, Control V, and resize it a bit. And one up here like this. And we don't have to worry so much about these weird artifacts. One in the front, and I don't know, one like this in the back. Okay, one more in the front, like this. Okay, and the good thing about this is we can still change the color, just like in the vector. Okay, we have our layers. Next, we want our rocket. Let's extend the background. And let's extend our rocket as well, all the way up to 48. We also want our explosion only to show up at the end. So we're going to click on this little thing up here. And we're going to click and drag to move it all the way over here. The moon also has to be there the whole time. But after the explosion, it's going to disappear. Okay, first things first, let's animate this rocket. So we're going to the animation tool. And first, let's move the center to over here. That's going to be the center of rotation. And we basically, let's set a waypoint over here. And we're going to go all the way to the end. And at the end, the position is going to be over here. And we're also going to rotate it so that it's facing the moon. And we're also going to shrink it. And let's readjust the position so that it's just going to be like this. So let's see what that looks like. Boom. It actually looks pretty good, but the rotation doesn't really make sense, does it? Yeah, so let's change it a little bit. So let's refine this tween. So for example, I don't really want to rotate straight away. I want it to go up. So I'm going to go over here. Let's go to the everything animator. And we're going to go and say the rotation is still 0. So in the beginning, it's going to go straight up. We also want the X position not to change. So here we have it's slightly better. It's going straight up, and only then does it start to rotate. But this part still doesn't look good, so we want the rotation to be much faster. Let's go and move over here. And let's micromanage the rotation. It looks much better, right? So we can micromanage this path of the rocket. Like here, it's also not quite right. It should be facing the moon by now. It should be just a bit above. we're gonna move this one as well over here. We're gonna move this key frame a bit further up. So that's one way to micromanage, to fine tune our animation. But there's another way. So we can go to Windows and then go to Function Editor, and it's super useful. When we go to Function Editor, we can select any of the columns we want to see. Right now we only have the rocket animated, so it only makes sense to select the rocket column. And all of these parameters, we can see their exact values. So for example, the x value of the parameter, the value of the x parameter starts on 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, just like we set it up until it hits this keyframe, and then it starts increasing for a while. We can set like these manually if we want. In this case, it does a linear interpretation between the different keyframes. So what we just did doesn't make any sense. So you'll see what happens. It goes all the way, it goes to the right until it reaches 10 and then goes all the way back to the left. But the point is, we can actually, it does come in handy quite a lot to be able to have such control. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z to get rid of that fake keyframe we put in there. And we can do it also for rotation and for the Y coordinate and the Z coordinate, as well as scale and shear horizontal and shear vertical, etc. So all these parameters we can put in keyframes like this. What's even cooler is that we can click on this Open Function Curve Editor, and we can even see how various parameters, so this is the rotation, how the rotation changes over time, and we can manually edit it. We can move it around. So let's zoom out a bit, right click, and so use the mouse wheel, or you can use a touchpad to zoom out. And then we can see that this is the rocket rotation. Let's increase the rotation by a lot down here, and let's see what happens. Let's close this temporarily. You see? Okay. We can also go function editor. This graph is kind of complicated. Let's Control Z what we just did. Control Z. I think it's okay like this. Control Y. Let's keep it like this. And what we can also do, so this graph is kind of complicated, so it's not usually a good idea to show all these parameters at the same time. So let's only focus on those parameters which we're interested in. Let's say we want to focus on the Y parameter. And then we're going to go up here and we're going to right click and choose fit. And then the graph shows the Y coordinate. And I'm going to Control Z. So let's say I want to change this. We can right click and change the interpolation so we can speed in and speed out. And instead of doing a linear line between them, it slowly increases and then speeds up and then slowly decreases when it comes to the Y coordinate, that is. So hypothetically, if we wanted the rocket to just go up and bounce on the ground for a bit, we could easily set it up like that. Let me just show you how. Let's just remove all the keyframes. So I'm going to hold down Shift to select each of them and press Delete. And then we're going to go to Window. And then we're going to go to the Y, and we're going to just say The initial value is 0, 0. And the final value is also 0. And then we're going to open the curve editor and we're going to click over here and we're going to set key to add a new keyframe and go all the way up there. Let's just scrub this timeline to see what that does. Maybe a bit too high. Ah, it's fine. Okay. And now we're going to add another keyframe over here and move it down there. And then we're going to add another keyframe. Maybe another one more, two more. Like this should be fine. And then like this. And when we go to view, when we go to render preview, let's see what it looks like. It looks good, right? But we can improve it. We're gonna say speed in, speed out. Rather ease in, ease out. Makes more sense, right? Ease in, ease out. And we can change the degree of easing in and easing out by moving these brackets left and right. But I think I'm pretty happy with the way it is. And let's see if we close that, we can see that all these values are calculated. We don't even have to do anything to calculate this smooth. Oh, it looks a bit like a spring like that. Okay, so let's control Z, 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 and put it back to the way it was before. So the last part with the explosion is really nothing we haven't done before, but it's pretty good exercise, so I recommend you do it. I'm just gonna walk through it with minimum explanation, and if you do get stuck, just do what I do, and it'll be fine. So next, we've done a lot, and before we continue, I don't want to mess something up and lose all the work we've done so far. So I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna do File, Save As, and I'm going to change the name of my scene to Rocket V2, version 2. So I have a backup. Okay, let's have a look and see what we want to do next. We want to add some lift-off sounds. This is actually pretty big lessons, but don't worry, we only have one more thing left, which is to add sound effects. So here we have Opentoonz, and if you had a look at your uh, link in the description, you will find two sound files, which I downloaded from freesound.org. And to import them to Opentoonz, we're just going to click and drag into the canvas. I've actually already imported them before, so I'm just going to choose keep existing file. As you can see, we now have two sound files, soundtracks. I'm going to mute one of them, and let's have a look at what the other one says. Okay, that's the explosion. And then I'm going to mute this one, and unmute the first one, and we're going to see what it says.
3, 2, 1, lift off.
Pretty good.
3, 2,
But it keeps
1.
going. And we don't really need all of that stuff. So we're just going to cut off the last part.
3, 2, 1, lift off.
Okay, so from here onwards, we can cut it out. I'm going to select this frame and delete it. And now we can select all remaining frames and delete it. Just click on the dark part above. Sorry, let me just zoom in a bit. And we're going to rename this to countdown. And then next, we want to move all of these levels so that the timing is right. Okay, next, in the final thing of this lesson, which was actually quite a long one, we've got one more thing we're going to do, which is add some sound effects. And if you have a look at the link in the description, you can find these two sound effects, which I downloaded from freesound.org. To import them, we just select them and we just click and drag and drop them into Opentoonz. And we click on import. I already imported them earlier, so because I was playing around with them. So I don't need to import them again. So I'm just gonna choose keep existing file. And for the other one, I'm also gonna choose keep existing file. And now we have, okay, ignore that. Let's delete this column. And now we have two audio files. I'm gonna mute one of them. Let's mute this one. The other one, we're gonna see what it says.
3, 2, 1, lift off. 3, 2, 1, lift off. Lift off. Lift off.
Okay, so it's a pretty good sound effect, but it has a lot of extra. First thing we're going to do is remove all that extra. So we're going to remove we'll keep the beginning, that's okay.
3, 2, 1, lift off.
Okay, over here, I'm going to select this one, delete, and then select all the remaining ones. And delete those. Well, let me show you again. Click up here, and you will see that the whole thing is selected. Delete. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna move it all the way to the front. So let's click and drag, click on the top and move it to the left. But if I'm honest with you, I've done this a number of times already and I had to redo and something went wrong and I had to redo a lot of work. So what I recommend for you to do on the exam as well is make plenty of backup files. So I'm going to go and make another backup file. We go Files, Save Scene As. And this time, instead of version 2, we're going to make version 3. And what we're going to do is click here on toggle X sheet in timeline. And what that does is instead of seeing a timeline, we see columns, which makes it a bit easier to see what's going on. I'm going to move this all the way to the side. And we're going to work like this for the remainder of this exercise. So first of all, we want to move this rocket. We're going to move this rocket, this moon, and this explosion to somewhere after the liftoff countdown has started. So we're going to select them all, hold down shift and click, and then right click, and we're going to collapse them. So put them all together in a single frame. And now it's basically like grouping them together. Now we're going to take this one and we're going to move it down. Let's see.
2, 1, lift off.
So we want it to start moving exactly there.
One, lift off.
Okay, we also want to extend the background. We're going to stand it down here, maybe even further later.
Three, 2, 1, lift off.
Okay, and now if we incidentally, by the way, if you want to ungroup them, you just right click and click on explode. And then it says, are you sure you want to do it? And you just click on apply. Don't worry about what that means. So the problem I had earlier is that it wouldn't explode. And that's because when you're in the timeline view, it doesn't explode. So I'm going to keep it collapsed. And I'm going to take the very first frame of it. And I'm going to press Ctrl C, press Ctrl V. So I'm going to go up to the first one, press Ctrl V. And here we have a whole bunch of empty frames. Just right click and say fill in empty cells. Oh, all the way down here. Fill in empty cells. So we've got the first frame of this collapsed group, and it's going to be stationary. And we're going to go all the way down here, and here we're going to see the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
3, 2, 1, lift off.
Perfect. Now, we also want to, I'm going to move this audio a bit to the right because I find it neater to put the audio on the right hand side. Next, we're going to add, as I'm sure you could predict, the explosion sound. And the explosion sound starts about, I don't know, here. We don't really need these frames. We don't have to delete them, but I'm going to delete them because I'm a bit of a neat freak. And now, just quickly make sure that we have the background extended as long as the sound effect. So we ended up with an animation which is 324 frames, which is pretty long animation. Let's see how it looks.
3, 2, 1, lift off.
Okay, that's pretty good. Let's render. I'm gonna go to fast render to MP4. And while it's rendering, let's have a look at this checklist. So this was a pretty big lesson and we learned a lot. So first of all, we learned how to add bitmaps. Remember, used Inkscape to create the gradient and we just dragged and dropped the bitmap to Opentoonz. We also learned about transparency. The explosion becomes transparent. And we just do it by animating colors. Incidentally, we can also make layers transparent. Okay, I'm going to show you in a bit. Yeah. We can make entire layers partially transparent by clicking on this little triangle next to the stop sign. Okay. So we learned about transparency. We also learned about exporting. We actually learned about that way back. And we also, in the very first lesson, we also learned about importing and editing cells. Okay, good job, everybody. It was a big lesson, but don't worry, the lessons don't get any harder than this. This is probably the hardest lesson, so it's just gonna get easier from here. But we still have a lot of interesting stuff to do, so let's get moving. Let's go to the next lesson, importing and tracing of vectors. But I almost forgot something, which is we have to copy everything to a working folder. So don't forget to copy this stuff to the working folder. Control C, Control V. Okay, for the next exercise, we're going to import this picture and trace it. We can't actually do that in Opentoonz, so we're going to use Inkscape to do it. So let's start a new project in Inkscape, a new document. And here in the resources folder, we can simply click and drag our mole and click on OK. And Inkscape has this trace bitmap option. Let's select it. And here we can change, we can do a single scan or a multicolor scan. Let's pick multicolor. And we can choose different parameters and we get a preview of what it looks like. So we can play around with this to see what we get. I'm going to stick to 5 colors. It looks pretty good like that. And then we're going to click on apply. And now you can see that I have the original PNG version or JPEG version, and here's the vector version of it. Let me click on the node editor tool, and you can see that I can even modify it now. And let's click on the selection tool and double click on it, and we can see that it's subdivided into multiple shapes. So if I want to take this white background, I can just select it and delete it to remove it. Now I'm going to remove the original PNG and I'm going to let's go to document properties and we're going to resize the page to the content. And then we're going to import it into Opentoonz. But before we do, let's create a new project. And a new scene. And we're going to name the scene tracing. So just to import it, all we have to do is find the file, which is this one, and we're going to click and drag to import it. And as you can see, it looks good, but it just messed up a little bit. So let's zoom in. And pan. And let's go to this tool, which is called the Control Point Editor tool. And if we click on it, we see, yes, the shapes are there, but the colors somehow got messed up. So we're going to take this color first, which is the color of that, and we're going to fill up the various shapes. Let's take our gray color and fill up the belly, and this will be the nose probably. And then white disappeared somehow. So I think that's this one. We're gonna color in the eyes like that. It's not perfect, but it's a relatively good job. And if we want to correct it, play around with this trace settings. Okay, next let's add some text. Welcome to the mall. It's very easy. We've got the text thing over here, and we can pick the size, the font, and we can pick the style. This is says bold and stuff and italic and whatever. And we can pick the size over here. Let's zoom out a little bit because this is quite small. And let's type welcome to the mall. We could also change the color if we like, or add a different color. Okay, so we save this scene and we're gonna add a new scene. And this one is gonna be called cards. That's gonna bring us to the next exercise, which is using the pen tool. Basically, this is all about the pen and the subselect tool. And then as an exercise, we're also going to morph, as a revision exercise, we're also going to morph between them. So remember, for morphing, we need to use a vector level. So let's make sure we have a vector level. And we're going to name it cards. And we're going to use Toonz vector level and click on OK. So we're going to start with a vector shape. And we're going to pick polyline. And we're going to use, for now, let's use a stroke color, which is going to be black. And we're going to use a fill color too, which is going to be red. So let's start by drawing the stroke. And we're going to start with the diamond because it's one of the easiest. There we go. So we have this diamond. Let's fill it in red. And let's go to the node editor tool. And here we see, as I showed already before, we can actually change the position of the nodes. This is why it's important to make a vector level. This would not work in a raster level. We can also click and drag on each of these line segments to make it a curve. We can also, if you like, right click on this and set to a nonlinear control point, and it creates these handles. And we can use these handles to set the direction of the line at the node. Let's set it back to linear. So we're going to add a little bit of curve to our diamond. Like so. Okay, so that's the first shape. We are going to add a second shape. We're going to go to our lever strip. If you don't have the lever strip, you can go to Windows, lever strip to open it up over there. And we are going to insert another frame by pressing the insert button. Let's take this one actually and Control X and move it into the first frame. The second frame is going to be a heart. So we're going to actually, you know what? Instead of Control X, we're going to Control C it and copy it. So we have the exact same thing. But we want to change the shape of this so that it's a heart shaped instead of a diamond shaped. So in order to do that, we simply change the direction of these control nodes. But the heart is a bit more extended. Wait, let's just do something like this. Much better. Let's just add in the thing so that we can have a rough idea of how big it's gonna be. And if you think that it needs to be a bit bigger or a bit smaller, we can always make an adjustment. Yeah, I guess it should be just a little bit taller. Okay, next it's clubs. So we're gonna take our heart and we're gonna press D for duplicate. And it's gonna make another frame. And now we're gonna go to our node editor tool again, and we're gonna reshape it one more time. But this time we don't quite have enough nodes. So we're gonna want to insert a new node. To insert one new node, we just hold down the control button and hover over the one of the line segments and then just click. And we have a new node. So to simplify things, for now, I'm going to select all these nodes, right click and set to linear control point. And then we're going to move this one just a little to the right and this one down. And I think it's good like this. I should really get a mouse because working with a touchpad is kind of terrible. Okay, this one I'm going to move over here. Let's move this one over here. And then we're going to add some curve back. This, and let's do it to this side as well. I don't know if you guys know the suits of cards. I know many people don't actually know them. But this symbol is called the spades. You can Google them if you don't know them. Great. So we're gonna leave, it should be black, but we're gonna leave it red for now because as you know, we're gonna animate this red fill color later. Okay, now we're gonna make our final one, which is the clubs. D for duplicate, control point editor, and what we need, we probably need another two, excuse me, escape, control Z. We're probably gonna need another two control points. One over here, control, and one over here, control. And then let's stretch this one out. In fact, we don't need this one up here, so let's delete it. Oh, you see, this has turned into a symmetrical node. We don't really want that, so we're going to set it to back to linear. And this one back to linear as well. Now we can modify it with more control. Okay. So now we have our four symbols and we want to tween between them. So we've done this before. Let's do it again. We're going to insert some frames in between them. And now for each region, we select the first, hold on Shift, select the last, click on in between, enter. And let's see what it looks like. It's transforming nicely. The second region too. In between. The third region too. In between. And now we've got one more region to go. We've got this clubs. Should turn back into this diamond. So let's take this, Control C, and go all the way down here. And then Control V. This should be, let's Control Z. And let's add one more frame behind this frame. And then delete what's here. And then Control V. Oh, have to go back up here. Control C. Down here, Control V. And now it's going to go back from clubs back to diamond. So let's insert another 5 frames over here. And we are going to in between over here. Okay, so finally we're going to Control A and we're going to right click and we're going to expose in XSheet. This column which we drew earlier, we can remove it. And now the last thing we need to do is set the colors. We just want to change the fill color. So here the fill color is red. That's fine. Color 2 should be red. And then it turns into hearts and it should remain red. And then it should turn into, okay, so when it's heart, it should remain red. So we'll put another keyframe over here. And then it should be space over here. It should be black over here, so let's convert it to black and put in a keyframe over here. And double click black. Keyframe. Yeah. And then here it should still be black. You put another keyframe over here. And then here we're gonna double click on it and turn it to red. I said turn it to red. And then keyframe. No, it just won't turn to red for some reason. Finally. Okay. That is pretty fast. So let's export it. Let's render it. Let's render it as a GIF. And let's set the output folder to we want to change the frame rate up here. We're going to change the scene settings to 12 frames per second instead of 24. And now we're going to render. And as you can see, we have learned to trace bitmaps and also create vector objects. Also in adding text, which covers everything over here. In our next lesson, we are going to apply a mask. Okay, using a mask in Opentoonz is kind of complicated, but don't worry, we're gonna learn about it and you just have to memorize the steps and you do it a couple of times and you'll get used to it. So let's first of all start by creating a new project called Lesson 6. And click on OK and let's go to the working folder. No, the resources folder and click and drag to put our image in, import our image in here. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to use a mask to make part of this image transparent, or hide part of the image, and only show the part which is underneath the mask. So we're going to create two new vector levels. Let's insert a new level and we're gonna make it vector because I like working in vector. And we're gonna name this the transparent part. And we're gonna make another one. And we're gonna call it the mask. Click on OK. So the transparent part will be just simply a white rectangle. Oh, excuse me, I'm still on polyline. A rectangle. And we're gonna fill it in white. And now, does that say mark? It's meant to say mask. Okay. And now we're gonna draw the mask part, and the mask is gonna be black. Everything that's black is gonna be entirely opaque. We're gonna make a ellipse, and we're gonna draw the ellipse here. You might be wondering, why am I doing this in two different layers? The only reason why you could do it in one single layer, but the only reason why I'm doing it in two different layers, it's going to be much easier to animate the mask only. Anyway, everything that's black is going to be opaque. So the white part is going to be hidden, and the black part we're going to see. So now we've created our mask. We have to go to Windows, and we have to go to the FX editor. This is a special effects editor. No, excuse me, my bad. We don't go to the FX editor, we go to the schematic. And the schematic opens this weird window which has a bunch of rectangles in it. Bottom right corner, toggle the FX schematic. We want to see the FX schematic. And here we see our different layers. We have this, let's rename it picture. This is the picture. We have the transparent part and we have the mask part. All of these three things, they feed into the X sheet, and the X sheet finally feeds into the output. Let us delete this and delete this. And we see that only the picture feeds into the X sheet now. So if we click on this eye over here, it means show what I'm seeing if you include the special effects. And you see, we only see the picture. That's because I deleted these slides. But let's switch off the eye so that we don't see the special effects. Okay, first thing we want to do is combine these two layers together. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to multiply. Multiply is a pretty safe bet. If we multiply black and white, it's going to end up the same. The only difference, so we're going to have the exact same image. Let me just show you what it looks like. Here, we see only the combination of these two layers. And it doesn't matter what order you put it in, it's going to be the same. So we basically just used black and white to combine this white. Excuse me, we basically used this multiply to combine them into a single layer. And this output here is what's called a mask. So now we want to combine this mask with this picture. So we're going to add one more special effect. And this special effect we're going to add is also in layer blending, and it's called local transparency. So I always mix up which should be source and reference. So just try it. I'm going to put picture as the reference and the mask as the source. And as you can see, that's probably not right because we ended up with a black and white image. So I'm going to shift them around. I'm going to put picture as the source and mask as the reference. Yeah, it's color. So as I said, we can only see which part is black. Let's see, let's actually remove this eye and close this FX schematic. And now we can animate the mask. Let's do a simple 24 frame animation. We'll drag these out. And we're gonna animate the mask. Start by setting the center to over here. Scale. Start with a very small mask. right in the middle. Oh, we can start over here, why not? And after 12 seconds, we're gonna put it up here and enlarge it. And then after 24 seconds, we're gonna make it even bigger so that it covers the whole screen. So it's gonna look like this. That's how our mask looks like. Let's slow it down a bit in the preview. Let's see, let's put it on 6 frames per second. And now let's see what it looks like when we include the special effects. It's better to keep this off because most of the time, because it's going to slow down a lot when we have it on. And that's how you use masks. In fact, it's a bit slow, 6 frames per second back on 12. You know what? I'm just going to make it longer. I'm going to just double the duration. Move these keyframes too. That should be fine. Let's save it. I'm going to call it mask. And I'm going to export it. And we're going to copy everything. So let's have a quick look at the checklist that taught us about masks. So we have one more exercise left, and this exercise is about paths. Okay, so finally we're on the last exercise, and this is all about having a path, having shapes follow a path. So let's start by drawing a green arrow. You know what? Actually, we have to start as usual by creating a new project. And it's going to be called lesson 7. Let's save all. And now we're going to create a new scene. So just Control S. Okay, we'll start with another vector level called arrow. And we want to make it a vector. Okay, let's just do a polyline. And we'll fill it in. Nice green color. Not too bright. And okay, so here's our arrow. First thing we want to do is put the center to the center of the arrow, or it's going to cause confusion later. So we're going to go to the animate tool, and we're going to move the center to the center of the arrow. More or less, doesn't have to be precise. Okay, next we have this one column. Let's just call it arrow. And we're going to go to Window, Schematic again. So last time we were using the FX schematic. This time we're using the stage schematic. We're gonna click on arrow, make sure that the layer which we want to put on a path is selected, and then we're going to click on new motion path. Make sure we got new motion, the path selected, and we're going to define our path. Let's move this out of the way. And we are going to define the path using a polyline. So let's say we want to start over here, and then go all the way down over here, and then go back over there. Press enter. Are you sure you want to place the motion path? Yes. Now we want to modify our path as we've done in the vector. It's basically we're just using the pen tool. Make a nice smooth arc. Enter. Here we have our path. I thought arrow disappeared. Our arrow is all the way up there for some reason. Anyway, let's move it. We're going to select our arrow and move it so that it's going to follow the path. Now we're going to go to our animation tool, and we're going to go to position. And we used to have X and Y over here. We would be able to set the X and Y coordinates. But now instead of setting the X and Y coordinates, we can only set a percentage score. So when I set 25% over here, it's going to be 1/4 of the way along this path. When I set 50% over here, it's going to be 50% of the way. And when we set 100%, it's going to be 100% of the way. So let's put a nice 48-second animation. And we're going to set our first key point over here. Let's just click over here. And the last key point is going to be at 100%. If you want, we can make him go back and forth by setting him down to 100% over here, and then back to 0% over here. Let's watch that. But that's not the assignment, so I'm going to Control Z that. Okay, so it goes like this. But we want to also animate the rotation. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to rotate. Yeah, we have to set the center of rotation again. Let's set the center to over here. Rotate. Let's see if that works. It's better, but not quite. So here it's okay, and in the beginning it's okay, and at the end it's okay, but somewhere over here we're going to make some correction. And over here we also have to make a correction. And that's it. Let's render. Let's save. And copy everything. Perfect. So let's have a quick look at the checklist. We have learned about setting paths. There's only a handful of things which we have not covered. So adding rulers, guides, and grid settings. Let's have a look and see here. If we go to view, we can actually click ruler and we see these rulers at the side of the screen. We can click and drag to add guides. Unfortunately, I don't know how to add guides precisely. For example, 50% or whatever. But here we have the 50% mark, so we know it's approximately 50%. But if we needed something like 22% or 55 pixels, I don't really know how to do that. This is also the middle, and then we have also these guides. We could do something like this. Using the ruler, we could mark out the exact right distance we need to go. But when drawing in the guides, depending on how steady our hand is, it's very unlikely that it's going to be accurate down to the pixel. So that's guides. We also have a grid. We can create a grid using this button. The ruler we've already seen. Then we have snapping options. Snapping options only work, unfortunately, when it comes to vector levels. But since I've been telling you guys over and over again that we should basically only use vector levels, that's not really a big problem. So let's add this vector level and let's draw some vector shapes. And as you can see, we have the option here. We've got the snap option for low, medium, and high. Let's just put it on high because that means it's the strongest snap setting. And now I'm going to draw a rectangle. And as you can see, as I get close to this guide, the circle appears. And it snaps to anywhere on these guides. We can also snap on one shape to another shape. So for example, let's say we have something like this. We can put one in the bottom corner. We also have the control point editor. The control point editor also has a snap option. And if I select this rectangle, I can snap not to the guide for some reason, but I can snap to the other rectangles. So that covers setting snapping options. Okay, next let's talk about adjusting frame rates. We've already seen that we can adjust the frame rate. It's in Render, Output Settings. Now, yeah, here it is. When we export, we can change the frame rate over here. If I remember correctly, we can also go to Scene Settings, and we can also change the frame rate over here. When we change it there, it automatically changes here too. Okay. Okay, adjusting frame rates, we've actually seen. So the final thing is looping or stopping animations. And in Opentoonz, if you export to a GIF, it automatically loops. And if you export to an MP4, it does not loop. But we can change that. But we need to do a workaround, and we need to use ffmpeg directly. So in order to, so for example, here we're going to go to my working folder, And we have this GIF, which runs and then loops. And we want to switch off the loop. So what we're going to do, let's keep this folder open and let's go to the desktop and open a new tab and find our ffmpeg folder, which contains our ffmpeg.exe. We're gonna press the window button and go to the command line. And we're gonna go CD for change directory. We're gonna pick this folder and copy address as text. And we're going to Control V. Now that we're in the folder of ffmpeg, we can actually run this file directly. But when we just run it without any options, we get this help. So what we need to do is we need to run ffmpeg. We have to memorize this, so we're going to do -I, which is written up here so we can remember it. And then the input file name, the file name which we're going to change. Then we want to say, what are we going to do? We're going to change the loop parameter, and we can either put -1, which means stop looping, or we could put 0, which is going to loop forever. So we're going to put -1. Then we're going to say the output file name. Our input file name is the one which we want to change is over here. So we're going to right click, copy as path. This is looping right now. Delete all that, Control V. And this is the output file name. We want to change that too. _no loop. Let's keep our fingers crossed and hope it's going to work. It seems to be working. Let's see. Yeah, it works. It's not looping anymore. And that means indirectly using ffmpeg, we can start or stop looping. So that leads us to the end of this course. Good luck on your exams. Don't forget to practice as many past papers as possible. See ya.